Really quickly, what happens when you've got valuation dysfunction? There's three main reasons here. One, the banker oversold you, which probably means you didn't ask the right questions when you're doing your due diligence on the banker. Second is due diligence issues that you didn't clean up ahead of time, and they find these issues and then they want a price reduction because of these issues that they find. So it's critically important to clean those up. And then the last thing is management team didn't present well, and they do their management presentations and they're stuffed by questions. They're not prepared. They didn't practice. They don't look like a cohesive team together when they're up, in front of the slides and the buyers are there in the conference room. It's really important that you come across as a cohesive team, get along well, and all of your due diligence issues have been taken care of. If not, then you're gonna probably have a valuation reduction. There are ways to structure around the risk, and don't forget, risk means price reduction. So you want to reduce risk ahead of time as much as you possibly can. If there's a buyer that's giving you a really nice price, who's the right buyer for this business, but they're hung up on a risk that you don't think is that real or that big, but they do, it happens. So there's ways to structure around it. So for example, just a really quick example, at Danaher, we were buying a $75 million business, and they'd been sued for IP infringement for a core product. Like, this was key technology risk for the entire business. And frankly, they shouldn't have been selling the business. Like, it was dumb for them, in my opinion, to sell the business when you're being sued on core IP of the company. But they thought that it was, frivolous. They said, oh, there's a 5-10% chance these guys will win, only if our lawyers or the judge screws it up. And so they went ahead with the sale process. We thought it was like 60-40 that they would lose. They thought it was 10%. So we said, put your money where your mouth is. If you think this is a no-brainer, if you think this is, frivolous litigation, then let's put together a $10 million escrow. And if you guys lose after closing, then all of the damages and all of the future royalty payments that you're going to owe the company who's suing you for the next 10 years will come out of the escrow, and we won't be harmed. But, and if it's a 10% chance and you guys win like you think you are, then you get the $10 million in escrow plus interest. No harm, no foul. Like, it's your money unless you lose. They lost. And all of the future royalty payments that they paid to the patent owner were taken out of the escrow, and we didn't have to pay anything because we structured around the risk. We got the deal done. And it wasn't ideal for us. I mean, anytime you lose, core IP litigation, it's not ideal for you, but we made sure that it wasn't going to kill us. And then in some cases, you may have to pause the process. You may have to put the deal on hold and just say, look, we've got a customer, our number one customer that's 30% of revenues, is based in Israel. And they're not getting back to us. And half of their staff is holding a rifle right now. True story, by the way. And so we can't we're not gonna, renew our customer contract with the key customer in Israel for a while. So we're putting the sale process on hold, and, we'll come back to you in 3, 6, 9 months. And that's not ideal, but it's better than trying to push ahead a process where people are like, look, if you just lost, they're going to assume the worst. So if you can't renew your contract for 30% of revenues and 50% of your profitability, they're going to reprice based on you losing that contract. They're going to assume the worst because no one wants to overpay and then not have the contract come through. So again, you could structure around that. You could do an escrow account, you could do warrants, you could do stock options. You could structure around potentially losing a big customer, or you could just say, I'm so confident that, they're still going to be here in 6 months, and that I'm still going to be their key provider in 6 months. I'm just going to put this deal on hold. I'm going to take that risk off the table, but it's going to require a restart in 6 months. And it's not ideal, but sometimes it's the best answer. And that happens. Like, a lot of people are like, crap, gotta wait 6 months, but for a year. but then they come back and everybody catches up really quickly and, you move on. Okay, we're almost there. Many buyers, like I said, are willing to pay more for the reduced risk. So risk equals price reduction. A lot of people don't really understand that. And they're like, oh, hey, it's not a big risk. Don't worry about it. Well, the buyer is going to price that risk into the deal. So the more you can eliminate the risk, the bigger price that you're going to get, because they're always going to assume the worst case scenario on your risk. Know how to structure this for the maximum price. There are ways for a win-win structure, additional due diligence. You can use due diligence to say, look, you're worried about this. Let's go talk to the customer. Let's go talk to the channel partner. Let's go, do a tour of the R&D center that you aren't putting a lot of credit into. There's actually a very, very high performance team. Go fix the concern if you can fix it. We talked about the litigation example, and we talked about escrow, reps and warranties. You can circumvent some risk by just saying, look, I'm going to put in the purchase agreement. I'm going to put a representation and warranty that this is not an issue. And if it's an issue, you'll have to go through a deductible just like you would on any insurance policy. But after that, you can come back to me on price, and I can literally like refund you part of the purchase price if this actually is an untrue representation of warranty. And so you can just say, I'm putting my money where my mouth is. It's not an issue. I know it's not an issue. You're wrapped around the axle for no reason. I'm going to put it in the contracts for reps and warranties. And oftentimes they're like, okay, if I can reduce the purchase price afterwards, if that's not true, and it is not true, it's okay, then just structure it with the reps and warranties, and you can often resolve it that way. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on this. Sellers always want to sell stock, almost always. Buyers often want to buy assets because they can cherry pick the risks and carve up the deal in 100 different ways. It's very advantageous for buyers to do that. As a seller, when you're selling your company, and your lawyers will tell you this, your investment banker will tell you this, you don't want to sell assets, you want to sell stock. There is a compromise position in some ways. It's called a 338H10. That basically is a stock deal, but you treat it as an asset deal for tax purposes. That's only applicable in some cases, depending on your tax basis. And again, your lawyers and your investment bankers will be all over this if that's applicable. A couple of things that you may want to think about as the CEO or board member of a company. When you get bought, a lot of companies say, look, I don't know if I want to sell, because if Google comes in and lays off half of my employees, then all of those people think that I got, millions and I sold my soul to Google or whoever. And now all of my friends that I've known for years, I've been working with shoulder to shoulder, half of them are out of job and I'm rich and they hate me. And I don't know if I want to, do that. And some people generally feel like, their peer group is more important than potentially selling the company to a disastrous situation. There are ways you can structure around that. It's called buyer or seller covenants, or buyer covenants, post-closing covenants, where the buyer will actually agree in the contract that there will be no layoffs or no layoffs more than 10% for a year after closing or 2 years after closing, unless someone, engages in fraud or engages in theft, something. But other than those circumstances, they agree that they will not fire anyone or fire more than 5 people or whatever for 1 year or 2 years after closing. So that way, look, let's be honest, you sell your company, you get $100 million, Google buys it, none of your friends are laid off for 2 years. And you tell your friends at closing, I've got a post-closing covenant. They are legally obligated not to have any layoffs or shut down the R&D center or whatever. It's in the contract, and you can pull out the contract and you can show them that page. That's helpful. A lot of people really like that. And then frankly, 2 years later, Some of your friends might get laid off, but at that point, they don't blame you anymore because it's been 2 years. Right? They had their chance. They didn't make it at Google. That's on them. That's not on you. So that's a really effective way to reduce risk. And again, this is why you hire experienced lawyers and bankers, is they'll be able to help you with this kind of stuff all day long. That's what you're paying them $1,000 an hour for.